Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Independent Podcast. My name is Fernando Garcia, and I'm joined by Rafael Perez. Rafael is a candidate for City Council here in the city of San Diego for District 8. Rafael, welcome, and thank you for accepting the invitation.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let me ask you, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Are you native to San Diego, or did you come here? How did, tell me from part A to part Z, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I would be glad to share that story. Interestingly enough, I'm proud to say I'm probably the only candidate in this race that did not grow up in San Diego. I grew up in Southern California in Santa Barbara, the son of a teen mother and undocumented father. And growing up in a city where you see some of the greatest wealth inequality in the entire state definitely impacted the person I am today. Grew up in a household where my mom lived with my grandparents and my uncle was there and he was into lowriders. And so that was my childhood. My childhood was spent at car shows, building lowrider bikes. Nice. That was the community that I grew up in and grew up around. Which is also what made it super attractive to come to college in San Diego. I remember in high school looking at a Chicano studies textbook and seeing Chicano Park Day in there, and I saw the lowriders out underneath the bridge and the murals, and I was, wow, like that seems like such a cool city. When I got accepted to San Diego State, I didn't hesitate, signed the letter, and back when it was paper, signed the letter.
Yeah, I remember that.
And didn't look back. I came here at 18 years old and have lived in the city of San Diego ever since.
Wow. Now, a lot of people love to talk about politics, and, it's especially right now. I mean, it's kind of on everybody's mind, but very few people, take that extra step to actually put their name on the ballot and put yourself out there. The time, the money, the effort. What is it, or maybe what happened that made you take that extra step? Why, what separates you from everybody else who just likes to talk about it at the kitchen table?
Yeah, I think so. Back in 2018, I'm in real estate. I'm a realtor, and I've been helping home buyers get home ownership, since 2004, the Monday after graduating from college. So I've been in that space my whole career. But I also am a real estate educator. So I teach at Cuyamaca College and at Mesa College, real estate economics, real estate finance. And in 2018, there was a vacancy on the community college board. And after talking to some people, I was convinced it'd be a good idea to run. So I ran, and I ran a hard campaign. And in the primary, I had two opponents that came out ahead of me. David Alvarez, Assembly Member David Alvarez, and Council Member Sean Rivera. And Sean beat me by 23 votes out of 21,000 voters, right? So it was one of those things where I had come out of nowhere. Nobody knew who I was. I was just running and trying my hardest. And to come that close to somebody who had really been preparing for a long time for this run, it kind of showed me that, with hard work and the support of the community, it's possible, right? So after that, I wasn't sure if I'd ever run again. I got it out of my system per se, and saw what it was like, and made the connections to be able to impact policy. I've been able to impact housing policy at the state level through my involvement and as former chair of the Casita Coalition. But there was one thing that really just struck me. And during that race in 2018, we bought a home in Sherman Heights. It was boarded up for over 10 years. It had been abandoned. There was a lot of activity coming in and out of this boarded home, which sits right across the street from a school. So a lot of that traffic was really concerning to the safety of the community, to the school. And so after 9 offers, because I really wanted to live in Sherman Heights. I had friends there. I was on the board at the community center, and just had just gotten involved as a board member, but had been a volunteer since I was in college through my fraternity, and loved the community. And so we had been looking, and things were pretty expensive. So found this boarded up home, had been abandoned for a dozen years, and was really a problem for the community. So after 9 offers and a lot of persistence, the opportunity to buy it came, and we bought it, and immediately saw how almost impossible it was to work with the city, getting permits, dealing with code enforcement, dealing with the problems that were there. And I'm like, I didn't create this problem. Like, I'm here trying to fix it. The community is so excited that it's not a nuisance anymore. Navigated that and was able to, it's a historic district in Sherman Heights.
Okay. So
we're able to restore the home back to historic standards, even though it looked like a boarded up plywood box. Yeah. And as soon as we restored it, I immediately went back in the next day and submitted an application for adding a second story. And one of the employees at the city of San Diego looked at me and said, "You will never build a second story on this home." Wow. And I just looked at them and said, I won't repeat the exact word, but I said, "Watch me," right?
Right.
and I was so mad that I'm like, here's this home that had been a community problem. I've done the research. I looked at the Department of Interior historical standards. I think I'm presenting a project that meets that. And it wasn't like, well, let's try to improve the project. It was, you will never, right? So so that attitude that starts with no was like, no, this is not right. This is not okay. Here I am, somebody who teaches real estate at the college level, has over 2 decades of experience, and I'm having an almost impossible time just trying to add 2 bedrooms for my family. Like that's just something that's broken, and that's really what fueled the fire to say, no, I'm gonna put myself out there one more time and run for city council. It's going to be an open seat, so everybody's got a fair shot to give it their best effort and see what the community chooses.
Yeah, that's awesome. In regards to District 8, describe to me, I personally do know District 8, but for people who out there who don't know, what are the areas of District 8?
It's a great question, and District 8 is very unique. There's not any other district like it in the city of San Diego, and that's because it's a tale of 2 districts, right? There's the north, which is everything from Shelltown to Barrio Logan and Sherman Heights on the north, and it's also the southern part of the city, so everything from Nestor, San Isidro, all the way to Otay Mesa. Right, to the eastern limits of the city limits down in the south. So that's actually connected by a dotted line that goes up San Diego Bay. So from the Navy base down there in Shelltown all the way to the salt mines in Chula Vista. The city limits go out into the bay and keep it connected. There's a state law that requires that cities be connected and not have islands. And that's how they got around it in District 8, is by the dotted line that goes down the bay. So I was at an event yesterday at the Gaylord Resort in Chula Vista, and I looked out at the water, and I'm like, I'm looking at District 8, and even though I'm standing in Chula Vista, right, because it runs down the bay to connect the north and the south, which makes it really hard for anybody to effectively, really understand the district. Either you're going to have a strength in one or the other.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now I know that real estate's with your background and housing is a big issue. Tell me a little bit about what some of your maybe things that you support or ideas you'd like to bring to the forefront, to help make housing at least an attempt to make it more affordable and more accessible for people.
Yeah, and I'm not going to, one of the things I've noticed with people running for office is they all have big ideas. I'm not going to come with big ideas. I'm going to come with the things I've already started working on, right? So one of the things that I'm super proud of getting passed at the state level was Assembly Bill 1033. It was something that I was in part of the core conversations to get it started. We found an author to draft the bill, and despite a lot of controversy and fighting and a lot of negotiation, we were able to get the bill across the finish line, signed by the governor. And that allows accessory dwelling units to be sold separately as a condo. It's working in Portland, it's working in Seattle, it's working in Austin. And what it's done is it's created a lower price point for home ownership. In Seattle, it's 40 to 60% of what a single family home sells for in a neighborhood, right? So most of the communities in San Diego, you can't find a home for under a single family home for under $700,000.
Right.
And that's a falling apart fixer at that, right?
Right.
So beyond that, right, you're talking about $1 million. So now you create this price point at 400 to 600 if you look at what's working elsewhere. And that's an economic driver, right? People talk about jobs leaving San Diego. People talk about their family not being able to stay here and having to go out of state, right? With successful implementation of this, that allows for opportunity to stay here, for businesses to thrive here, for communities and working families to have that generational wealth they can build here. So that was something I not only championed to get passed at the state level. Recently, when there was a lot of the dialogue around accessory dwelling units and the bonus program and all of that, the retooling of that, there was an opportunity because AB 1033 requires local implementation. And as much as I had been pushing, it hadn't happened yet at the city of San Diego. So with that opportunity, with all the major changes going on, one of the problems was going to be that there was going to be a loss of production, right? In the numbers that the city had reported for housing. So there was an opportunity to kind of plug that gap with these accessory dwelling unit condos. So AB 1033 ended up getting adopted by the city of San Diego during that whole process. It was overshadowed by the big giant bonus programs that everybody was upset about. But during the same conversation and during the same ordinance, there was also the adoption of AB 1033, which was much less controversial, but yet I think can be super impactful. Now, that's going to require leadership for it to actually get built, for homes to actually happen, for it to become normal in San Diego. So I think it's not a what am I going to do? It's what am I going to keep doing? And that's making sure that there's affordable home ownership opportunities so that, you know, when my daughter grows up, she can afford to own her own home here. So that next generation families can afford to stay in the communities they grew up with and they grew up in. You know, that's something I hear consistently in District 8 from older residents who have been here for decades that, well, I wish my family would have been able to stay here. I wish my daughter didn't have to move to Arizona. And, you know, so that's something that I think is not just important to me, but it's important to the residents of District 8.
Yeah. What you know, the cost of living is obviously, you know, that we're kind of touching on a little bit. One of the things that people are starting to talk a little bit about is actually the city of San Diego taking over SDG&E and basically starting their own utility company. Do you have any feeling on that, or is that something that you're willing to look into, or how do you feel about that issue?
You know, yeah, I think anytime that the community is feeling squeezed, there's an opportunity to look at the other options, right?
Yeah.
I think the way I approach everything is bringing the different stakeholders to the table. And the fact that we do have the highest utility rates is, you know, is a big red flag. So I'd definitely be willing to listen to the proposal, right? Not every proposal behind a good idea has good details. So, you know, until I really familiarize myself, I wouldn't necessarily be ready to take a position, but I would absolutely be ready to listen, and ready to try to, you know, understand where that's coming from and learn about it. And yeah, if there's an opportunity that's going to benefit the city and it's sound and it makes sense and it protects, you know, the people involved, then, you know, that's something that I would support if that's the situation.
Yeah. And I mean, have you ever looked? I know that a lot of people are talking about like things like campaign finance reform at the local level. You know, some cities have implemented things like ranked choice voting. Is that something also that, you know, it's one of those topics that it's very unknown and new to people, but do you feel like things like that, attacking campaign finance reform, like and implementing things like ranked choice voting would be beneficial to the community? Or, you know, do you have any kind of feeling on that kind of issue?
Yeah, on ranked choice voting, it's a coin toss, right? I think it's got intended benefits. And it's in this race for a couple of endorsements that used ranked choice voting, I've seen it work both ways. One was an endorsement where, you know, I had been involved, and I think I had the strongest track record in that space. And ultimately, you know, because of ranked choice voting, somebody else ended up with the endorsement, even though initially I had the most votes, right?
Mhm.
So I can see that it can go sideways in some cases. And then there was another situation where things were really close, and I ended up with the endorsement through ranked choice voting. And
Yeah.
right, so when you look at ranked choice voting, my feelings were very different depending on how it turned out, right? So
Right.
I think it's a really complicated way to approach things, and it needs to be carefully structured,
Mhm.
because it may have some unintended consequences. But the reason people talk about ranked choice voting is because of the frustrations people have with the political system, right?
Yeah.
There's winners and there's losers, and those that have support from the traditional places that support candidates have certain advantages, and those that are at a disadvantage need to be better, try harder, and kind of really pound the pavement to get the votes they need to overcome that disadvantage. So I totally understand where the sentiment to create something like that is. The same goes with finance reform, right? Some people have a very easy time getting maxed out voters to line up behind them to support their interests. And then there's others that have to go out into the community, go out to their friends and ask for 10, 20, 50, $100 if you're lucky at a time. And when you look at the fundraising results and you look at the all, which is all public, right? So,
Mhm.
and any individual who's curious on who's being supported by who can very easily go and the city clerk's website and look this up. And once you start paying attention to that, you get a very clear idea of where people are coming from.
Yeah. And then, there's a lot of talk of the budget here in San Diego and the deficit that we're looking at. What are your plans in terms of what are your ideas in regards to how we should attack, that issue?
Yeah, and I think this is a space where my experience in real estate could actually come in handy. I think one of the reasons that the council is going around and looking for band-aids, right, to fix these budget problems is because there's been a series of bad deals stacked on top of each other, right?
Yeah.
You can look at 101 Ash, you can look at other real estate deals that have just really bled our budget dry. And I think having somebody at the table that has my background could actually take a different look at approaching these types of deals before they become the kinds of deal that are just perpetually bleeding the budget dry, right? So I think one of the problems that we have as a society, right, not just at the city level, is we tend to focus on the symptoms and trying to put a band-aid on them.
Right.
But we really need to take a step back and look at the root of the problem and look at how we got here. And a lot of it has been bad, poorly thought out deals that have resulted into the symptoms that we're now throwing band-aids at.
Yeah. Yeah. And then sorry. One of the things that's really going on right now that people are talking about, it's in the news, is ICE coming into cities, specifically, right now Minneapolis. But what are your thoughts about, ICE is obviously here in San Diego, but it doesn't seem at the level that when they went into Minneapolis. Are there things that how do you feel about it? Are you somebody that's like, hey, I feel they're overstepping their boundaries, or are you, how do you feel about an issue like that?
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely in the camp, and mostly because I see it in my community, right? I think that the sentiment as a whole is, ICE may not be that deeply embedded into our community, but I've seen ICE in my neighborhood during school drop off a block away, right? I've seen the neighbors that aren't going out to the park anymore. It's had a negative impact on the emotional well-being of the community. People aren't doing the things they used to do anymore. And this isn't just the undocumented community. This is the community at large. People are living in fear. And when a community lives in fear in their own community and haven't done anything wrong, then, that's a clear sign that something is wrong and that they've overstepped their authority.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some other issues that maybe I haven't touched on that are also very important to you that you'd like to share?
I think my approach to this campaign, and a lot of this was inspired by the 2018 run that came so close and didn't go. And I felt like I packed my bags and went home and was like, all right, well, that's it. And in retrospect, I look back at how much energy, how much sacrifice, how much time came not just from me, but from my family and from everybody involved and from all the volunteers. And to come so close and walk away empty-handed, I knew that this time around, that's not the kind of campaign I was going to run. So I've focused this time on having conversations. And as I always tell the people that I'm talking to in the community, I believe you should use your ears and mouth in the according proportions, right? So I've made it a point to go out and listen and not just go out and talk. One of my frustrations with the field right now of candidates is that everybody is saying the right things, but it doesn't necessarily reflect what they've done, right? So you can go out and make all the promises in the world, but is that is that in alignment with your body of work? Do you have anything to show that that's actually what you mean?
Right.
And B, is that something that you and your consultants came up with? Or is that because you're actually hearing that from the community and that's what they want, right? So I've made it a point to when I'm speaking with the community is to listen and write down and hear the problems to then define what the priorities should be. And time again, it's people are tired of waiting too long to get things done, right? I have this problem. This tree has been uprooting the sidewalk in front of my house and the city wants me to pay for it. They're the ones that planted this tree so there's this frustration and things kind of just appear to go into a black hole. People will submit things on get it done and it's not getting done. And right. So, and I think the most obvious case last Friday, I had a meet and greet near Shelltown, and everybody that showed up for the most part were flood survivors. And they, 2 years later, are still dealing with their concerns that they had before the floods. Right. So, a lot of people think, well, that was done. It was resolved. They got rebuilt. And that's not necessarily the case. One of the residents was walking me through the channel right there and pointing out to the numerous problems that still exist. There's a check valve that weighs a ton and backs up the water and right at, in the area that flooded the most. There's still trees in the middle of the channel that are, that don't belong there. If you go up to National, where District 8 starts, where District 8 and District 9 and District 4 sort of merge, over by ECC behind the Imperial Marketplace, there's 20-foot tall bamboo growing in the middle of the channel, right? So there's a lot of deferred maintenance that you would have thought would have been urgently dealt with after the floods that has not been dealt with. And I think that's an extreme example that had extreme consequences for people, and they're still dealing with it. But the examples are abundant all around. And I've made it a point to get out from corner to corner of the district because I'm very familiar with my community. I'm very familiar with the surrounding communities. But you start going further away and there's a lot to learn, right? And the only way to learn is to go out and really try to get an understanding of the issues, because you can't start tackling an issue until you understand it. So I made it a point to get out, to listen, to understand, to take lots of notes, and really develop a campaign platform that focuses on tackling the issues now. Because the last thing I want is to put all this energy, time, and effort into a campaign and walk away empty-handed. I know that if I do a good enough job tackling the issues for the community now, that I'll earn their vote and be able to make it past the primary. And if that's not the way things turn out, then I know that one of the things people talk about is we need to empower our community's voices, right? I don't think empowerment is enough. Empowerment makes you feel good. Empowerment makes you heard. We need to give power to the communities, give power to people that's independent of a candidate, right? That power needs to hold candidates and electeds accountable, independent of where that empowerment came from, right? So, I think a lot of elected officials and leaders go as far as empowerment and make people feel good about the voice they have. but real power comes when, you as a resident have the ability to affect change in your community.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anybody in District 8 feels that's the current situation.
Gotcha. And to kind of give, who right now is the, who has a seat right now that's terming out?
Yeah, Councilmember Vivian Moreno is currently in the seat. And then there's a field of 7+ candidates who have started the process and filed.
Yeah. And is Vivian somebody that you know, or that have you discussed, like, hey, what are some of the issues or some of the things that you have challenges with? Do you have that relationship with the current city council member?
Yeah, I think through a lot of the things I'm involved in the community, there's been opportunities to work with that office.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that in that role, everybody's got opinions on elected officials, whether they've done a good job or not. Right. I like to focus on the positive. So I will give credit where credit's due. And she has been a voice that said, hey, this community has been left behind, and this community's done this, and this community's got these challenges. So, she's not afraid to speak up for the people of this community on the council, and that's admirable.
Yeah.
But I think in the community, there's a lot of frustrations too about just kind of the feeling of waiting around for things to happen and promises to make their way through the city system. And quite frankly, that's not any one person's responsibility. I think that as a system, there's a lot of red tape at every step of the process. I experienced it with my house. So I think that change isn't going to happen overnight, but when a community has a voice that's leveraged into power, then I think that's the kind of change that gets traction and gives results, eventually, and hopefully sooner than later, right?
And do you feel like you're back? I mean, with the community that you're in, the part of San Diego, also being basically a pretty much almost like a border town, and really San Diego is, and it's one of the things that makes San Diego great, being a border town with Tijuana, and having that, back and forth, and your background. Do you think that? I mean, how do you feel your background coincides with that and makes you a good candidate, considering the community you have and the fact that we're neighbors with Tijuana?
Yeah, and I think having come from a community that was very divided between the people who had mansions and the people that were mowing the lawns, right? Yeah. It impacted the way I see things. But I also grew up in a business. My grandpa had a grocery store. And the people mowing the lawns would come in from the people who just finished a round of golf at the country club, and they drink the same cup of coffee, right?
Right.
But I think somebody who can connect and work with and partner with the entire spectrum of our community is what's going to be necessary to allow the ongoing success of our region. But also there's a lot of challenges, right? And to tackle them, like the Tijuana River Valley, that's not just a challenge for the city. That's not just a challenge for the county. That's going to require collaboration from both countries, from every jurisdiction, and to really come together in a meaningful way. I've proposed that there should be a joint powers authority created. That sole focus is that watershed, right? This is a watershed issue, not a jurisdictional issue. Oh, where it crosses the city of San Diego, we need to make a repair. No, this needs a holistic approach. It's a watershed. It needs to start at the top and be resolved all the way to where it exits in the ocean. Because in Sherman Heights, the closest beach we have is Coronado, right? You go over the beach bridge, and yet oftentimes we can't take our kids to go swim there because of the issue. Right. So it's a regional issue, and it's going to require leadership. And I think that leadership can start with the District 8 office. And I would absolutely champion the creation of something like a joint powers authority, where people come together, have a seat at the table to together tackle the issue, and not this piecemeal approach that we've been doing for decades.
Yeah. And so I'll be closing up here, but tell me, how can people reach out to you? Is there any events coming up? If you could give a last second spiel of why you're the best candidate for District 8.
Yeah, thank you for that. And my website's rafaperez.net, RAFAPEREZ.net. And, so in social media, Instagram is probably my most active one, Rafael Perez 619. So I announce events there, upcoming meet and greets, and I'm super accessible. My phone number's out there, my email's out there, and I respond, right? When people reach out, I respond, I connect and make sure that I'm listening, because that's my commitment. As far as, something that I'm really excited about is I've actually created an app to help gather all the data I'm hearing as I'm out talking to people, because you can hear stories, but if you don't capture the data and have the stories, it's hard to really start working on the problems, right? So I'm starting, with an app, and I'll announce it in the next couple of days on social media. But I'm really excited to have a tool to help the community organize their concerns, so that the power that they have with their concerns and their stories is something we can carry beyond an election. And that's either going to serve as my platform when I'm in office, or it's going to serve as my platform after this campaign, so that we don't just let this be a campaign, but let it be a movement that empowers our communities to start having control over getting their issues resolved, and stop waiting for somebody else to take care of the problems for them, right?
Absolutely. Okay, great. Well, hey, Rafael, thank you so much for coming on the show. I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully we'll see you in the city council.
Thank you, and I appreciate your time.
Have a great day.
You too.